So this is a very simple project that teaches us a lot of relevant skills that is needed for real application. This is going to be a serverless build. Let's just get right into it. And then if you are new here, kindly do well to give us a like and a follow. Drop a comment if you have any questions. Please do well to drop a comment and then like this video and share. Thank you so much. Let's get right into it. Alright, so we are going to first start by creating our database. So the DynamoDB table. So I'll look for DynamoDB. If you are new, just search it. Then I'll click on create table. My table name will be notes. Then the partition key or the primary key is going to be noteId. The type is going to be string. Come to customize settings and ensure you have on demand selected. So having it on demand pretty much means that you are going to be built based on the number of times you use the DB table, right? Pay as you go. Then we will leave everything else as default, then proceed to create our table. So this is a very simple table. The next thing we are going to do is to create a row for our Lambda function. So I'll search for IAM, click on rows, create a row. Then for use case, I will look for Lambda, click on next. Then I will search for AWS Lambda basic execution row. So this kind of contains the basic permissions that Lambda requires to do whatever it wants to do, right? So write into CloudWatch log, create log groups and do all that. This basic permission does that for you. So I'll simply click on next. Then I'll give my role a name, right? Then I'll proceed to create the row. So I'll basically click on view row. As I said, look at the permissions. We are doing some CloudWatch stuff. I'm going to then proceed to add my actual permissions, right? So I'm going to create an inline policy. Just click on this drop down, create an inline policy. I already have the JSON in the guide. So those of you working with a guide, you should be able to get it. If you are not with a guide, you can pretty much duplicate the permissions that you are working with. So this is what we have. In here, we are doing DynamoDB puts, we are doing get item, delete item, and then scan. So these are the permissions our Lambda functions are going to need. So what I would then do is to update this ARN, right? So I can easily come into my, then let me just copy this ARN from here. Or I can easily use star to get all resources regardless of what I'm doing. But again, let me just do this. Click on next. It's always good to use the principle of least privilege, which pretty much says that you just give access to the number of permissions you need. I'll create my policy and then there we have it. Now the next thing is to create our Lambda function. So what this Lambda function is going to do is that this Lambda function is going to handle all our CRUD operations, right? How to get items, put item, create objects, retrieve, update, delete, and all those things that we seek to do. All that is going to be handled in this one Lambda function. So I'm going to search for Lambda. Please ensure you create all your resources in the same region. Create function. So I'm going to alter it from scratch. My function name is going to be Notes API Handler. My runtime is going to be Python 3.14. Then here, come to advanced settings. Enable the execution with AWS have changed the interface a bit. And then in here, I'm going to look for my role. So my role is the Notes Lambda row we created. Click on save. Then I'll proceed to create my function. Good. So now our Lambda is ready. This is the template it generates for you. I'm going to do a couple of things. First, I'll go to configuration, and then under the general configuration, I'm going to increase my runtime. Oh, sorry, my timeout to about a minute. That should be fine for this project. Now I'll come back to code. Under the code, I'm going to update the code and then paste our working code in here. So this is a very simple code. For those of you using the guide or following the guide, you have all these things in there well explained, and then how to even generate it using an AI prompt and things like that. For those of us too that don't have access to the guide and then follow along on the GitHub repo, what you do is you are going to see just the code, just copy it and then paste it. Make the changes that there is to make. But I advise you try and get access to the guide. Inside the guide, I give you AI prompt, which explains what it does. And then if you want to generate your own version of the code, you can copy the AI prompt to do that. And then that one will be very, very helpful to you. We are in an era of AI, and AI allows accelerator development and things like that. So kindly do all to check it out. Alright, so in here, what am I changing? So all that, as I said, is that it's kind of doing the things that we want our CRUD operations, right? So handling our post method, that if someone wants to add get for retrieving stuff, get, and then delete, and then we are handling calls in there too. So this is a very simple Lambda code. I'm just going to deploy my Lambda function. Anytime you create a Lambda function, please ensure you deploy it to have it working. Now that my Lambda is deployed, I'm going to the next thing. I'm going to create our API gateway resources. So I'll pretty much search for API. Click on create API. For this, we are going to use REST API. So I'm just going to click on build. Again, if you are following the guide, you have the detailed instruction and certain explanations in there. Now, and then if you want to understand this, I have a couple of videos where I explain API gateway in details. You can check all those things out on the channel. For but this project, I'm just going through how you are going to build it and then understand it. The more you build, you understand certain things along the way too. So with API gateway name, I'm going to call it my Note API. Leave everything else as default and then create my API. Now, please here ensure you have the root selected, and then we are going to create our first resource. So I'll click on create resource. Note. I will enable course, then create resource. Now with the notes created, what I'm going to do is to click on the notes, and I'm going to create a resource under it. So now this resource is going to be, the resource name is going to be noteId. Why we are doing this is, with the curly brackets, what happens is that it allows us to pass it pretty much more like a parameter, right? So we're able to pass noteIDs to retrieve a specific node details or delete a specific node details. So again, I'll do that, and then I'll enable course. Course pretty much allow our browser, right, to kind of speak with our backend services and our APIs, if you want to understand that. Yeah, I will have a detailed guide that explains API gateway very well. That is going to be a project based. Again, that is going to be readily available in our guides. That is the platform that contains our guides. You can check it out too if you want to understand some of these things very well. Now that we have our notes ID created, this is fine. Now I'm going to proceed to add our methods. So first, with the notes selected, I'll create a method. Now this method is going to be a get method, and then it's going to be a Lambda integration. I will enable Lambda proxy integration. This kind of prepares the request, right? The event coming into the Lambda to follow a certain format so that everything works. My Lambda is in shape to take in that, so I'm going to look for that Lambda. That's the note handler Lambda, and then from there I will just create the method. So this is the first method. Again, on the notes, I'm going to create another method for post. The post will allow people to create, right? So a post method, the same, enable it, and as I mentioned, I have the same Lambda function handling all of the things. So I'm just going to select the same Lambda function. Then I'll create. Now, if I want to get a specific node, right, based off its ID, I want to be able to get that also. So I'm going to click on this resource, and then I'm going to add another get method to it, right? So this is going to get based on that specific ID. Lambda proxy integration, the notes API again, and then I'll create the method. Now the last method to be created, again on this, if I want to delete a specific node, I'm just going to use the delete, enable proxy integration again, and then do this. So guys, this is very simple, working with REST APIs and do whatever you need to do. Now let me do this. So one thing I realize is that at times when you enable your calls in there like that, doesn't work. So I prefer to enable the calls once again, once I have this. So I'm first going to click on the notes, click on enable calls, and then I will insert all my methods, select them, then click on save. I'll do same for this enable calls. Handling and dealing with calls can sometimes be a pain. So alright, so there we have it. Now that our resources are done and completed, the next thing we are going to do is to deploy our API. Especially when you are using REST APIs, if you make any change to have it working, you have to deploy the API. If you don't deploy the API, it wouldn't work. So I'm going to create a new stage. I don't have any stage now. I'm going to call my stage, say dev, then I'll click on deploy. So now this is my API gateway URL that we currently have, and then we are going to work with. So this is the backend component of our application. Now to the front end component, we have a very simple index.html application that we are going to deploy. Right, we have a very simple index.html application that we are going to deploy. That will show us our front end. The focus of this class is not solely about the front end. It's pretty much you understanding how to create your lambdas, your robes, creating your REST APIs, and then having an interface and doing those integrations. So you can, if you're a software developer, this is the components, the backend that you're going to work with on AWS, and then the UI will come in. Yes, so now for our front end, what we are going to use is this simple HTML file. So for me, I'm going to use a cursor as my code editor. If you are following along, you can use any code editor of your choice. Again, this is not anything massive. We just need a place to edit our text, right? If you want to, you have a default text editor on your local, you can use it. I prefer this. So what I'm going to do is to create an index.html file, and then I'm going to paste our UI code into it. So regardless of the text editor you use, you should be fine. So I prefer to use Cursor or VS Code. So now this is a very simple UI. So I'll try and then show you guys the UI. There we have it. This is our UI. So this is just a very simple UI. That's kind of ties everything together for us. Now inside your UI code, there is a part that we are going to update, right? So now this is our front end. This is our application. How do we link it to our backend? Through our API, right? So that's why we created our API URL. So now I'll come to my API gateway, copy my invoke URL, then I'm going to replace it in here, right? So on a larger scale application, there is a connection, something similar like this, and APIs. You are creating multiple APIs and then you are calling them. So this is pretty much it. This is just a static web application that we created. That's why it looks simple. So now when I connected it, you can see it now. I can proceed to create a note. See, there are no course issues. So let me say test notes. Hello. Then I'll save my note. So you see it's working. So now if I go to my AWS and then look at the database and I click on explore items, you can see the new note I created, right? So this is how simple you do it. And then this is being made possible by creating and calling our API. So you can create multiple note and all. So our Lambda function, our API gateway, and everything is working fine. It's creating it and then going in there. So this is a very simple tutorial. Guys, if you really want a detailed hands-on guides that create a lot of projects, please do all to check Tech with Kobina, techwithkobina.com, and then you get all these guys up there. And then also, if you are following along the tutorial and then you don't have access to the guide, what you can do is to check the GitHub repo, and then I'll do all to provide you access to all the code. Just that the guide has a lot of explanations in there. And then please do all to follow and then subscribe if possible, depending on where you are watching. Thank you so much for watching, and then let's meet in another video.